Welcome to episode number 266 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for all of you marketing, advertising, public relations, and communications professionals. You can find us by searching for us, using Beyond Social Media Show. You'll find all of our channels there. We were recording live on YouTube on April 19th, 2019. I've forgotten the year. Topics this week include Childcast, Culturejacking, Game of Thrones, Twitanic, Industry SEO, Don't Mess with Mother, Web Storytelling, Eavesdropping Speakers, Emotional LinkedIn, Helvetica Now, Traveling Podcast Studios, All in the Family Live, Notre Dame Misinformation, Facebook's Email Grab, AOC Quits, HuffPost Plus, and a lot more. Bill kicks it off with Best Story of the Week. Bill, what do you got?
Well, in a week with so much horrible news, I was so happy when I saw this story. This story is about a 5-year-old girl whose name is Azka Sharief, and she lives in Des Plaines, and she told the Make-A-Wish Foundation that she loves podcasts and she wanted to make her own. So she came to the studios of WBEZ last week, and she worked with their podcast team, and she recorded the first episode of Azka's mystery podcast, and she wrote it, and it's called The Stealer of Diamonds, and it centers around the story of Tessa, who's a thief who steals everything in town, including candy from babies. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but if you have 5 minutes, because that's the length of it, you can hear what happens. You can stream the podcast. And she said she wanted as many people as possible to listen, so Make-A-Wish set up an email account so that she can hear from her fans. I wrote to her this afternoon and I said, you're going to be the lead story on our podcast tonight. And at WBEZ, Carrie Shepard said, to see someone so young have such a keen ear for radio and sense of storytelling was rewarding. And you know, she has such a fun, full personality, and she's just adorable. You must listen.
Oh, that's cute. I'll definitely listen. So it's a scripted podcast.
That she wrote. Yeah, awesome. It's her story.
That's fantastic. Another thing that's fantastic is Game of Thrones, the final season. Sad. Started last Sunday. And there are brands jumping on the Game of Thrones,
wagon,
riding the coattails of Game of Thrones popularity, culturejacking it, and a couple of highlighted ones that I found. The Atlanta Falcons football team. So fans of the NFL, if you've been following the NFL and you follow them all year, you know that they release their schedule. And the NFL is brilliant in content marketing because they use every event to create interest among fans. So the schedule release for next year's schedule is something that they do. This is from a Golf Digest. Coleman Bentley, who spotted the Atlanta Falcons using their schedule release in video form, using a game. You've seen it. There's all the clockwork and everything on the Game of Thrones. So they use that to release their schedule. That was rather clever. Oreos came out with an amazing reproduction of the Game of Thrones opening credits sequence. But of course, they're using Oreo cookies to build the whole set. So it was brilliant. But the most brilliant one, I thought Oreos was going to be most brilliant until I found this one, Fender Guitars. So the Fender had a deal with HBO to create custom guitars, Fender guitars, Game of Thrones themed custom guitars. The opening of their video has 6 guitarists playing the opening theme. Each of which, three of which are playing the custom guitars that the Fender custom shop built for it. So they're called the Sigil Collection, and the Jaguar Fender guitar is for the House of Lannister. It has gold plated, and the House of Lannister, if you don't watch the show, this is a house that is rich. They are known for paying their bills on time. So gold-plated and intricate inlays on the Jaguar guitar. The Stratocaster is for the House of Targaryen.
Oh, Dave's freezing. Uh-oh.
Body of the It has dragon scales carved into the body of the guitar and has a leather pick guard. And the Telecaster is the House of Stark, which is raven black. They have a gray wolf etched into the pick guard. Just brilliant use of culture jacking. So you get to hear the opening theme from the from Game of Thrones, and then they interview all of the luthiers who created these guitars. So just well done all around. We'll put the videos in the show notes so you can watch them. And yeah, just fantastic.
Personally, I loved the Oreo cookies the best. Yeah. So this could have been either in our good news or bad news this week. Jack Dorsey was speaking at the TED conference, and Twitter users were asked to ask him questions, which is always a dicey idea. So this is from a story by Brian Clark from Next Web, and another one from Wired by Emily Dreyfus. And so he took the stage at the TED conference, and instead of giving the standard talk, he answered questions from TED's Chris Anderson and Whitney Pennington Rogers. And somebody had the brilliant idea to have the hashtag AskJackAtTED. What could go wrong, right? So, so many people hate him. And Jack has lately been talking about his spiritual journey and his trips to his ashrams and his, the way he's rethinking his life. And he's rather a reviled public figure at this point. And it didn't take long before the trolls started sinking their teeth into him. And for example, somebody asked him, now that your platform has played a significant role in the end of humankind, what's your next step? Have you considered blowing up the sun? It seems like the next logical step. And then, how do you feel about giving a platform to literal Nazis? And Anderson said to him, and I just love this, we're on this great voyage with you on the Titanic. And they had all these conversations going back and forth. And he said, there are people in steerage Anderson said, there are people in steerage who are saying, we're worried about the iceberg ahead. And you say, that's a good point. And our boat hasn't been built to handle it. And we're waiting. And you're showing this extraordinary calm. And we're all worried, but we're outside saying, Jack, turn the fucking wheel. It's democracy at stake. It's our culture at stake. It's our world at stake. You're doing a brilliant job of listening, Jack, but can you actually dial up the urgency and move on this stuff? Will you? Yes, Dorsey said. We could do a bunch of superficial things, but we need to go deep. And the problem is he never says when, and he never says exactly how. And, no two ways about it. I mean, there's stuff that has to happen on Twitter over the weekend. Ilhan Omar was, getting death threats, and Trump clearly tweeted out a video that encouraged that. And then on Monday, when Notre Dame burned, and it was not just on Twitter, but everywhere, there was all this fake news around it. And nothing was done to stop it. Nothing's ever done to stop it in real time. And, is that possible? Is it impossible? Who knows? But Jack Dorsey has to take command of his Titanic.
Well, I mean, two things. It's never, ever a good idea to have a tweet wall during a conference.
Terrible idea.
I mean, didn't we learn that many years ago? I mean, come on. So there's that. But the other thing is there's a pattern here. So Facebook, Zuckerberg has a pattern, predictable. Something bad happens. He apologizes. They didn't intend to do it. They make some cosmetic changes. And they go back to doing the same thing again, right? So Dorsey's is, we have to do something, but we can't do something just cosmetic. We have to go deep, and then he doesn't do anything.
Well, that's what's been happening. And it's happening on YouTube too. Don't let them off the hook. And there's a huge problem. And we've talked about this before, and I strongly believe that the social giants are going to have to make a move to fix this in a way that the government will take over if they don't.
Yeah, well, one cosmetic change I noticed on Twitter today actually was they started adding an author label to.
I don't have that on mine.
Well, I have it on your tweet because that's the example I saw it on. So one of your tweets was the original tweet, and I replied to it. And when I replied to it, it had author saying on your tweet next to your name that you were the author. So that's
It doesn't show on my Twitter. I think it rolled out to you before it rolled out to everybody.
There you go.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're just testing it. I don't know. So anyway, one podcast I have listened to, and they're doing this past week. They've been doing a series of them that I wanted to highlight. Search Metrics. They have Voice of Search podcast. It's with their CEO Jordan Cooney. This week, so they obviously Search Metrics. They do SEO. This week, they're doing a series of podcasts related to ranking factors, search engine ranking factors for specific industries. So while there are overall ranking factors, there's more than, who knows how many there are, but last count there was more than 200. But overall, for across any industry, there are these factors. But within industries, there are also ranking factors. They go into, with the podcasts, these 5 podcasts, they go into the ranking factors specific for e-commerce, for media and publishing, for banking and finance, for travel, and healthcare. And so a couple of examples, banking and finance, some of the ranking factors are obviously, HTTPS security. Having a secure website is more important than banking and finance than it would be for media or publishing, for example. Same thing with e-commerce. Travel, ratings are more important than other categories. So they're worth to listen to. I just wanted to call that out. We'll put a link to the podcast in the show notes.
So Earth Day is coming up, and there's just an absolutely fabulous video from Apple for Earth Day. This is from an Adweek story by David Greiner. And for their 2019 Earth Day video, the title is Don't Mess with Mother. And they crank up, I love this, Megadeth's Last Rites for a high-intensity look at reminding us that nature is the original force to be reckoned with. And the coolest part, of course, is that the whole video is shot with the iPhoneX. Got to see it. It'll be in the show notes.
It is a stunning video. However, did you read the fine print of the video?
What did it say?
Fine print in barely legible, very light gray text read additional hardware and software used.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah. Well, okay. But, everybody does that.
Yeah, well.
It makes it better.
Yeah, well, speaking of images, this is a brilliant use of the hero section of a web page. The top part where they have the side-to-side image stretched across the website. This is from the New York Times. Jennifer Valentino DeVries is the author of the article. But at the top of the article, rather than just an image stretched across the top of the article, there's for the hero image space, there's an autoplay video. Now, normally it's pretty bad, but this is a great use of it. So it's an autoplay video, and the video is from your point of view. And so as you are walking through a suburb in Arizona at night, there is a copy that pops up on the screen that says, on March 14 of this year, just after midnight, a killer slowly followed a bicyclist down this street in Arizona. You turn a corner onto another street, and then more copy pops up. It says, blurry video showed shots of being fired from a white Honda as the man was gunned down outside his home, but the police had no other leads. The camera stops outside of a house, and then up pops copy that reads, except Google. The title of the article is Tracking Phones. Google is a dragnet for the police. It's just a brilliant use of that technology to draw you into a story. I'll put a link in the show notes so everybody can see that, but it's well worth visiting and checking it out.
The Times has been doing really extraordinary visual content lately, and beautifully done. Every week they do something else that's wonderful. They really are just on top of their game. So someone else who I find on top of his game all the time is Tom Fishburne, the Marketoonist, who you introduced me to, Dave. And he says marketers have to figure out how to navigate the voice channel, of course. And so Salesforce says 32% of marketing organizations are using personal assistants to support their customer experience. And he says, I think it also illustrates a broader issue marketers increasingly face in balancing personalization with privacy. And he has some absolutely hilarious cartoons that I will include in the show notes of interactions with voice. I know that this is your latest passion, Dave.
Well, it is, and will continue to be, because it's going to loom larger and larger in our
All the
market in the
time.
future. But BL, you gotta get a smart speaker, because how else are you going to know how to take advantage of this?
I am not having a smart speaker in my house anytime soon.
BL, do you have a phone?
Do I have what?
Do you have a mobile phone?
Of course.
So you're carrying around a microphone all the time with you, yet you don't want to have a smart speaker.
I don't share my location. I take a lot of precautions for my personal privacy.
Yet you have a microphone that you're carrying around all the time with you.
Yes, Dave, and I don't want a personal speaker in my house.
All right, okay. Just trying to get an emotional reaction out of you.
Yeah, well, you're good at that.
So, speaking of emotional reactions,
good transition.
Search Engine Journal's Matt Southern writes about LinkedIn, who is introducing new ways to engage with your posts. They saw the success that Facebook was having with their reactions, and now they're adding their own reactions alongside the like button. So users were asking for more expressive ways to respond to different posts, and new ways to understand why people are responding to their own posts.
Uh-oh, Dave froze.
Celebrate. There's a celebrate reaction. There is a love reaction. There's an insightful reaction. And there's a curious reaction, which one of my LinkedIn connections pointed out. That's kind of a passive-aggressive Minnesota reaction. Another one, though, is interesting. When we Minnesotans want to be passive-aggressive and we're kind of throwing shade, we say, that's interesting.
New Yorkers do that, too. That's all over the country, I think.
So those are the reactions are starting to roll out now, and will be available globally in the coming months. So there you go.
So I come from a family that owned a typesetting business back in the day when typesetting was a thing before the internet. And so I was really interested in this story from Wired that's by Ariel Pardes. And it's a story about Helvetica, the most used typeface in the entire world, has gotten an update, and now it's called Helvetica Now. And the story of Helvetica is that the typeface is 62 years old, and over time, as needs changed, it kind of got patched along the way. You know, it added larger size and italics and certain characters, and along the way, it got kind of messed up. So now Monotype, which is a company that's been around forever, has taken it upon themselves to create Helvetica Now. And Helvetica Now is really quite beautiful, and it's intended for, it's got three categories of use. It's got giant for like ad kind of stuff, and it's got an internet kind of stuff, and it's a beautiful typeface, and it's everywhere. We see it every day. Google's logo is a variation of it, but it's when you see the typeface in the story, you'll realize that you see it everywhere. It's in the New York City subway, at the stops. It's on pretty much everything you look at every day. So have a look at this story. It's quite fascinating.
So I couldn't even pay attention to this story that as you're talking about it, because I was thinking the whole time about whether the Wired editor assigned that story to that particular writer for a reason.
What reason do you think there would be?
Her name? Ariel?
Oh, that's great, Dave.
Yeah. So here's a story that points to what I've been saying forever, that audio is the next thing. This is a different take on it, though, and an interesting take. It's from a Billboard article by Sherry who reports that podcast studios are becoming a staple in travel and hospitality industry. So there's Detroit Foundation Hotel and Ace Hotel chain are installing studios in their buildings to position themselves to guests as creative hubs. So they're including podcast studios at their hotels, so guests can go in and podcast. That's I doubt that there's a large percentage of guests who are actual podcasters, but it's an interesting play.
It's a very interesting play. I mean, back in the early days of blogging, the Roger Smith Hotel anointed itself the hotel for bloggers and gave out discounts for bloggers. And pretty soon there were events being held there by bloggers and parties and conferences. And so maybe that's the ploy. But I think that's fun.
Attracting podcasters to try out their studios and give them some earned media, right?
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
So I'm out of bad news. I mean, I'm out of good news. I have only bad news.
Right. I got a good one here. This is from Deadline's Lisa DeMores, who reports that Jimmy Kimmel will present a live 90-minute primetime show on ABC that's paying tribute to Norman Lear's comedy series All in the Family and the Jeffersons. It's going to be they're going to choose an original episode from each of those shows that will be recreated live and will air on Wednesday, May 22nd from 8 to 9:30 Eastern time. So All in the Family, Woody Harrelson's going to play Archie Bunker, and Marissa Tomei will be Edith. And for the Jeffersons, Jamie Foxx and Wanda Sykes will play the roles of George and Louise Jefferson. So it's interesting because it's a live event that really has a hook that people are going to tune into. So TV is turning back to kind of its roots to gain more viewership, I think. The biggest things the things that get the highest rankings on television these days are sporting events, which are live events. So just an interesting play, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I hope they bring back Mary Hartman. That was my my all-time favorite. I'm out of. Go ahead if you have more news.
No, I'm done with the good stuff. Let's get on to the bad.
Well, earlier this week, the horrible fire happened at Notre Dame, and I read a bunch of stories in BuzzFeed by Jane. Oh, her name is hard to say. Sorry, Jane Litvinenko and Casey Newton in The Verge, and hoaxes and conspiracy theories and disinformation campaigns started to spread like wildfire. And InfoWars relied on a since-deleted tweet to spread a baseless claim that the fire was set deliberately. Then there's zero evidence that Muslims were responding to the fire with smiley faces. And InfoWars contributor Paul Joseph Watson tweeted a link to a video that claimed to show Muslim people celebrating the fire, but it had absolutely nothing to do with Notre Dame. And there was a fake Twitter account. This is kind of amazing. There was a fake Twitter account impersonating CNN that spread another hoax about the fire, claiming it was an act of terrorism. And it was created this month. It had only 7 followers. It said that it was a parody account, but people didn't notice anything like that. And the account was finally removed from Twitter, but it was 2 hours after the misinformation started to spread. Dozens of accounts tweeted a link to a 2016 article to create the impression that it was more recent. The story was about a car found near Notre Dame with gas tanks and Arabic documents inside, and this was supposed to suggest that that was connected to the fire, but it happened 3 years ago and had nothing to do with this. Then there was a fake Fox News account that also said it was a parody in its bio, and it said that there was a fake reaction from Representative Omar, and that account's been removed. But even though they said that they were parodies, their visual branding was exact copies, and there was absolutely nothing that was a parody about their tweets, and yet nobody clicked to find out about their bios before retweeting. And as Casey Newton said, while nothing's going to match the horror of seeing the world lose one of its most beautiful structures, the calamity showed again how unprepared tech platforms are to process news events in real time. Conspiracy-minded goons continue to twist real-time events into nefarious plots in the absence of facts. And, then there was the leader of the free world while the building was still on fire, making his bizarre conspiracy-tinged remarks. They think it was caused by, at this moment they don't know, but they think it was caused by renovation. And I hope that's the reason. Renovation, what's that all about?
Yeah, well,
that was to be expected, that he would do something that stupid, but what about the people who retweet all this stuff without knowing what they're looking at? It's not all the fault of the tech platforms. People have to vet the information that they pass on.
Well, I mean, what we've discovered over the past several years is that
they don't.
Well, no, I mean, like we have known this for a long time, that people make decisions based on emotion, not on logic. It's just that with the internet, with social media in particular, it's just there's a platform for activating that at scale, right? So if you're predisposed to have an emotion towards something, you're going to share it without looking at it. You're just going to reactively share it without looking at it. It's sad, but it's true, and I don't know.
Well, that leaves the rest of us who have to pay attention to what we're sharing and not follow those people and not spread that information. And I think it's a responsibility that a lot more people need to step up to.
It's true, but not following. I mean, those people are probably Russian bots or Russians.
Unless they're Chinese.
Well, yeah. So anyway, more bad news.
We got lots of that this week.
Yeah, this is from Business Insider's Rob Price, who reports that Facebook has harvested email accounts of 1.5 million users without their knowledge or consent. So since May 16, Facebook has collected lists of 1.5 million users that are new to the social network. The company said that it was the contact data was unintentionally uploaded to Facebook.
Oops.
So does anyone believe Facebook at this point on anything that they say? They kind of have as much credibility as the president or Bob Barr. And they say that now they're deleting them. Facebook was asking some users to enter their email passwords when they signed up for new accounts to verify their identity.
And people did that?
Which is a security no-no. And a message popped up saying that it was importing your contacts, but it never asked for your permission to do so first. So this is all the Business Insider's original reporting. So, I mean, my question is, doesn't this qualify as hacking?
Well, it does. And, this will be part of the apology tour for next week. And, Zuckerberg's, we didn't mean to do this and we're fixing it. And we have 5 million people who are working on it. And, who believes him anymore? Who believes them? And yet there's still gazillions of advertising dollars being spent on the platform. And until that stops, nothing's going to change.
Again, as we discussed last week, unless the big advertisers band together and say no more, it's not going to.
Well, that's true. And, when are they going to do that? I mean, it's got to get to that point. And I read an interesting article this week about how Facebook board would like to get rid of Zuckerberg, but he owns so much of it and he runs so much of it that they can't.
Controlling interest, so it's not.
Yeah. You wonder, why haven't they gotten rid of him? Because they can't. Right. The boy genius strikes again. So does this bring us to shiny objects, or have you got more?
No, I got another one. Here's this is a Washington Post article by Hamza Shaban, who reports that in an interview with Skullduggery, which is Yahoo News podcast, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that she stopped using her Facebook account. She's scaling back on all social media because she thinks it's a public health risk and can lead to increased isolation, depression, anxiety, addiction, escapism, which are all legitimate things for scaling back your social media use. But she still has accounts on her site. her Facebook accounts have dozen active advertisements going on. 2 days ago, she posted an Instagram video. Please, when a politician says that they're not going to use social media, don't believe them. And I think this woman is a brilliant communicator. I think she's amazing just as a communicator, as a marketer. She's brilliant. But this was a PR stunt. It was a grab at a headline. No, she's not quitting social media.
It's a great grab at a headline. Lady Gaga called social media the toilet of the internet, and in many ways, it is. Anyway, I have a shiny object that, if I had $600, maybe I'd get one. This is a robot that will cuddle you to sleep every night. You spoon with it, and it rises and it falls like it's breathing. And the claim is that it helps you fall asleep more quickly and wake up more refreshed, all because you were cuddling with this oversized butternut squash thing that's covered in soft fabric, and it has this motorized breathing mechanism that expands and contracts like a lung, and you hold it against you, and without much effort your breathing begins to synchronize with it, and that slows your heartbeat, which makes you feel relaxed, which guides you into sleep. So in the Wired review, it said that the Somax app allows for micro adjustments, and the gentle breathing feels soothing, whether as a nighttime ritual or a daytime stress reliever. But they also noted synchronized breathing helps you fall asleep, but doesn't help you stay asleep. And for $600, where's the alarm clock? And, $600 is too much to spend on a robot, even if you're in love with it.
Wait, hold on. Robot? Only $600? That sounds like a bargain. Not that I'm going to get one. It sounds really bizarre, but totally. Inevitable. But inevitable.
Yeah, well, I have a cat for that,
Yeah, right. So
me to sleep. Yeah. Then it walks on the roots of my hair, but that's a whole nother thing.
Has your cat been licking your hair yet?
No,
that's another thing some cats will do. So there's that.
I had one that did that. It was so gross.
Yeah. So my shiny stuff is in the Innovation Hub podcast. I list a couple of episodes. I'm exploring new podcasts these days. So
me too.
Yeah. So this one is great. It's one episode was titled "When Tech Gets Talkative." It had James Vlahos. He's an author of "Talk to Me: How Voice Computing Will Transform the Way We Live, Work, and Think." Pay attention, BL. And yeah, in the podcast, explained how companies are trying to make Echoes and Siri's of the world more sociable, because people you get used to talking to them. So they're trying to figure out how to extend that conversation, because people just want to have conversations with their smart speakers like the people. So that was fascinating. Then another episode had titled "Loons That Shoot for the Moon," and this was with Safi Bakal, who's a physicist and former biotech entrepreneur, who came up with the phrase "loon shots," and by that he means ideas that were at first considered crazy, but grabbed hold and became amazing. And one of which is radar. So radar was an accident that happened during World War II, when they're trying to find better ways at radio communication, but noticed that ships were passing by and there was a blip on the screen that created radar. And then he goes into the history of Vannevar Bush, whose World War II innovation led to current government innovation infrastructure that is responsible for the National Science Foundation, for example. So it's great podcast. Listen to it. Put a link to it in the show notes so we can find it.
Oh, that's one I definitely want to listen to. So that brings us to political news.
One last thing on the shiny new stuff. Spotify now has a page for being able to submit your podcast feed to Spotify. That's at podcasters.spotify.com. And so do that, and then you can get analytics directly from Spotify.
Spotify is getting big into the whole podcast area. I like it. So politically, this is one of those man bites dog stories. Fox News actually zinged Trump this week. This is from a story in The Wrap by Tony Maglio and Reed Nakamura. And there was a Bernie Sanders town hall on Fox. And it was narrated by Fox's Brett Baer and Martha McCallum. And it had 2.5 million viewers, and 489,000 of them were between the ages of 25 and 54. And it had the overall largest tally of 2019 for these kinds of events. And Sanders, was on top of his game there. And among the viewers were Trump, who tweeted that Fox was too soft on Bernie. And so Brian Krasenstein tweeted, "You're attacking Fox now? Hell has frozen over." And then in a tweet, Brett Baer shot back and said the president was welcome to come on for an interview of his own. He said, "Thanks for watching, Mr. President. We'd love to have you on a town hall soon, or even an interview on a special report. It's been a while. We cover all sides." So I think that's amazing.
Well, it looks like there should be more of those rage tweets by Trump, because apparently Pete Buttigieg is in negotiations with Fox for a town hall forum. So I think that's smart. I think the Democrats need to go on Fox. So speaking of Buttigieg, though, I have a political one. This is a case study in brands, in presenting your brand standards online. And so for listeners, I'm going to show my screen so we can demonstrate this. So if you want to see it, go to beyondsocialmediashow.com/266. But I am going to share my screen here, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. So at design.peteforamerica.com, this is where the Buttigieg campaign has their design toolkit. And you can see it is divided into 4 sections. There are logos, there are colors, there are type, and there's Team Pete. And so this design toolkit tells a story of the candidate, and it explains the meaning behind the brand design. So this, I think, is going to be a case study in how to present your design standards. So if you go into the logo section, it says we've got tons of ways to show your support for Pete. Use our color pairing tool to select the approved combinations for all of our campaign logos and download them. And so you can see their different logos. And if you go down further, it has a color pairing tool. So you can choose among their brand colors and create your own logos. So let's do Team Pete, and then choose River Blue as the background color, and Heartland Yellow as the foreground color. And then you've got that, and you can download it. And then they have a logo reveal section. So it says Pete Buttigieg is a new kind of presidential candidate. He is a millennial. He is a mayor of a blue-collar city in the heartland. He is unapologetically substantive, yet refreshingly salt of the earth. He is a millennial Episcopalian, Maltese-American, gay, left-handed veteran running for the highest office. He is progressive, yet pragmatic. He is uniquely positioned to bridge the divides, tearing this country apart. And then you see the logo, which has a arch in the cover of the name Pete, which is deliberate because it's an arch under a bridge. And so he goes on to say the Jefferson Boulevard Bridge is a concrete bridge built in 1906 over the St. Joseph River in the heart of South Bend. It just tells the story of him. So that's very clever right there for the logo reveal. And then you go into the colors, and rather than adopt the default red, white, and blue color palette of past presidential campaigns, his color palette is deeply rooted in his hometown, South Bend, Indiana. It goes on to name the colors: Strato Blue, Clay's Cream, Heartland Yellow, and then tells the story behind the colors. So watch this. There's a color story section where you can drag a bar across pictures that are all about his hometown, and it displays the colors. It's very, very cool. And then you scroll down further, and it describes the color. So I'm just going to take one here, Strato Blue. Strato Blue was one of the available colors in the 1964 line of Studebakers, an American automobile manufacturer founded and headquartered in South Bend, Indiana in 1852. Studebakers closed its doors in 1967, but still forms an important part of the local identity, as can be experienced at the Studebaker Museum. The redevelopment of a former Studebaker plant is a cornerstone of the city's Renaissance district. So he's using these colors and these landmarks of his hometown to define himself as a candidate. It's just a brilliant way of going about it.
Who did this? Do you know who the designer was? Does it say?
There's let's go to another section here, and there's some designers. It doesn't say who the overall designer is, but if you go to the type section, then our brand of typography pays homage to America's industrial legacy, its Pete's ability to convey substantive ideas plainly, and to his bold vision for America that reaches the future with a focus on clarity. And then it goes in, and there's industry. It's very inline, brand right, exactly. You scroll down the next section. There is some here, Team Pete. The next section shows Team Pete. So it has logos for each state in the union, which are unique to each state. And if you go and look, if you look at the Iowa one, that is typeface. That is unique to Iowa. It's kind of the Iowa Hawkeyes typeface. In Minnesota, Minnesotans will recognize this. If I go to New York, BL, I want your response there. So what's that New York logo look like for you?
Nothing I recognize.
But this is all Team Pete signs were hand lettered the old-fashioned way by over a dozen talented letterers. And so there is one from Minneapolis, Minnesota. There's one from Brooklyn, New York. There's 3 from Brooklyn, 4 from Brooklyn, New York. I think Brooklyn, New York.
We're talented here in New York, you know.
Represented here. But the Minneapolis one, I'm sure that typeface is recognizable to me because of that local designer. So anyway, this is just fantastic example and case study of how to present your brand design.
That is absolutely brilliant. I've not seen anything quite as comprehensive, and I think that's extraordinary. I love that. So I have one more political one, and this was kind of a marathon. This was Seth Abramson of Newsweek on the Mueller report. He live tweeted, he had a live thread that detailed his view of the report's handling by the media and Barr and Congress, and he had more than 450 tweets in the thread, and it got funny pretty fast. And so the thread chronicles the release of the report and the news and analysis from Newsweek and the Times, and he asked that people retweet it. So Craig T. Nelson tweeted, Seth Abramson has been tweeting from his computer, not his phone, every 1 to 2 minutes since 8 a.m. this morning. We can safely say he hasn't pooped in at least 13 hours. Praying for my man. Esther Chu said Seth Abramson's thread on the Mueller report now exceeds the word count of the Mueller report. And you could tell that that Abramson was getting tired, because in tweet number 420, he tweets, true story. When I was in college, I was a radio DJ, and the only music I played was psychedelic music from 1966 through 1971. I spat, I don't know what that means, on everything before and after. I had only one listener I knew of, a pizza delivery guy who'd been at Woodstock. So Hector Cannabis said, this might quite possibly be the greatest thread in the history of Twitter. Who else has the munchies?
Well, he spat at it because he doesn't like any music before or after the psychedelic era.
Well, he said he didn't like it then. He didn't say what he likes now.
Okay, but that's why he said spat. The other thing is this is Mystery Science Theater meets politics meets Twitter.
Yes, I mean, really, but just, I mean, imagine going on for, I think it was 15 hours that he just kept tweeting.
That's great. I love media criticism on Twitter too. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So are we going to wrap this up?
I have a pro tip.
Oh, yes.
And it occurred to me as we were doing the show, and it has occurred to me on many occasions, I really wish that everybody would put a pronunciation guide for their name on their stories, because not all of us have a crew that can do that for us. You know, if we were on the Today Show or ABC News, we'd know how to pronounce everybody's name, but nobody does it. We should start doing it immediately.
So I have a pro tip to follow on that, and to contradict you. Yes, we all do have a crew. It's called YouTube. What I do is just copy and paste their last name or their first name, whatever.
And how does that help you pronounce it?
And usually there's a YouTube video that tells me how to pronounce it.
Oh, I haven't seen that every time.
Try it out.
Oh, well, I just really wish that would happen. That would make life easier.
I agree with you. They should have that as well. All right, so let's wrap this up. Daily numbers. This is popular. So Major League Baseball has started. Thank God. My Twins are doing well. The NFL is approaching the draft. NBA, I don't care about. Hockey just is about to end, but sports is in the air, of course. And I've got popularity of sports leagues as measured by viewers. So this is millions of viewers, and the most popular sports league, of course, is the NFL with 139 million viewers. Major League Baseball is next with 83 million viewers. Tied for third place is the NBA, National Basketball Association, with 63 million viewers, and esports with 63 million viewers. Electronic, so that's watching people play video games. That's watching tournaments of video games. I predicted this long ago when Xbox Live came out. I was like, oh, this is spectator sport right here. So people are going to be watching video game tournaments, and lo and behold, it has happened.
Look for it in the next Olympics.
Yeah, no shit. it's turning into big business too. NHL is fourth with 32 million, and rounding out the last in the United States. They've been trying to get a toehold in the market for a long, long time, but Major League Soccer has 13 million viewers, and it's growing though. We have we just in Minnesota just built a stadium for our Major League Soccer team, so it's getting there.
You know, Dave, the only sport I actually like to watch is basketball.
I'll watch the last 2 minutes of it. That's all you need to know. And otherwise, there's not enough drama in basketball. There's too much scoring.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, I've liked basketball since I was in college. I really have. But anyway,
Any basketball?
No, I've never played a sport.
I played basketball 1 year and I was no good at it, so I lost interest in it.
No, my sport is swing dancing. I can't say that anything ever involved the ball.
Sport? Yeah.
What?
It's not a sport.
Oh, no, I don't think you've watched the Swing Dance Championships.
Are there judges?
Excuse me? Yes, of course there are judges. There are global competitions.
If there are judges, it's not a sport.
Oh, come on. All right, Dave. You're particularly contentious tonight. That brings us to the end of episode 266 of the Beyond Social Media Show. And you can find us by just searching for Beyond Social Media Show. You'll find links to everything we talked about today at beyondsocialmediashow.com/266. And we would love for you to leave us a review on the site. David Erickson, my charming co-host, is on Twitter as D. Erickson. He's on Instagram as DE Erickson. He blogs at the Fabulous eStrategy blog. I am BL Ochman. I'm on Twitter as What's Next. My blog is what'snextblog.com. I'm on YouTube, and I have not been blogging much because my arm's in a sling, but I'll be back. And the Beyond Social Media Show is at beyondsocialmediashow.com. We're on YouTube, of course. We're on Twitter as BS Media Show. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Home. Is that what it's called? Google Voice. And we're on Google Home. Okay. And all you have to do is say play Beyond Social Media Show, and your voice device will do that for you. Right, Dave?
Well.
So we'll be back next week, same time, same station. And we thank you for watching tonight.
Thanks for watching.